Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this side event. My name is NDMUN28. I'm the head of information management at Hello Trust. In this event, we want to highlight the crucial role of women in mine action, and especially in leveraging geographic information systems for creating safer lands from explosive remnants of war. Human activity and explosive remnants of war have one thing in common. I'm going to make it as a quiz, but I think we may not be able to organize that. So what is in common between the human activity and explosive remnants of war is the spatial intersection, the spatial overlap. The humans conduct their daily life and they come across the hazards. This is where the GIS and geography become critical. If you look at the title, we say, she maps, she protects. Every single hazard that is identified and mapped saves lives, because by knowing the threat, the extent of the threat, we are able to conduct activities that reduce risk, from risk education to non-technical survey, technical survey, and then post-clearance development activities. The discussion of this panel will focus on initiatives that enable women to develop GIS expertise by addressing challenges such as limited access to technical education and career opportunities. This initiative seeks to break these barriers and create a more inclusive mine action sector. Today, we want to propose the sector this initiative, Women in GIS for Safer Lands. Today, I'm honored to be joined by two panelists. Colonel Cletus Maregere, Director of Zimbabwe Mine Action Center. Director, do you want to say something about yourself?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Colonel Cletus Maregere. I've been involved in demining operations for the last 30 years, having started from the floor shop and having risen to finally become the Director of Zimbabwe Mine Action Center. Thank you.
And our next panelist, Noor Zangana, Program Manager, Capacity Strengthening for Information Management at GICHD.
Thank you so much, Luan. Good morning, everybody. And I really thank you to come, wake up early, and to come to attend our side event. I know the time is a little bit challenging, but thank you so much for taking time and waking up and coming. My name is Noor Zangana. I work as Program Manager for Capacity Strengthening Program for Information Management at the GICHD. I have around more than 15 years of experience working in mine action in terms of information management, and I'm really happy to be here in the panelist to give you one of our stories on adapting how we encourage women to work in the GIS. Thank you. Over to you, Luan.
Thank you, Noor. So, through our talks and presentations, we'll cover the empowerment of women in Zimbabwe, the Women in GIS for Demining initiative, the importance of accessibility in training and challenges faced. Then we'll end with a call for action. Now, I'd like to pass to Director of Zimbabwe Mine Action Center. Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The topic is as given there, Women Empowerment in Zimbabwe, a government perspective on leadership roles in the private and public sectors and in mine action. By way of introduction, In Zimbabwe, the government recognizes the critical importance of women empowerment as a cornerstone for national development. Various ministries are actively involved in promoting gender equality and empowering women to take leadership roles in both the private and public sectors. The government of Zimbabwe adopted a new constitution in 2013, which espouses the values and principles of gender equality. It recognizes the rights of men and women to equal opportunities in political, economic, cultural, and social spheres. It also guarantees the right to equal pay and avoids all laws, customs, traditions, and cultural practices that infringe on the rights of women. Finally, it calls for the state to ensure gender balance and fair representation of marginalized groups, as well as promoting women's participation in all spheres of society. Over the years, several guidelines have been developed on how to effectively mainstream gender considerations in mine action, including by the Gender and Mine Action Program and by the United Nations through the Gender Guidelines for Mine Action Programs. These are useful references for mine action stakeholders in Zimbabwe to ensure gender and age-sensitive mine action. The Oslo Action Plan also includes several actions on gender and inclusive of mine action, which Zimbabwe commits to implementing. Government strides in promoting women empowerment. You may want to be apprised that women empowerment has become a significant focus for governments worldwide, with various initiatives aimed at promoting gender equality and enhancing the role of women in society. One notable stride in this area for the Zimbabwean scenario is the inclusion of a woman in the presidium. It may please you to note that the presidium for Zimbabwe consists of the president, his two vice presidents, and the chairperson for the ruling party. And in our case, the chairman for the ruling party is a lady, shown on the slide there. So we have women issues represented at the highest level. The next aspect that I want to talk about is to do with ministers and deputy ministers. Zimbabwe has a cabinet of 26 ministers, out of which 6 are women. We have also a number of deputy ministers. Zimbabwe is constituted by 10 provincial capitals, and these provincial capitals are led by ministers of state for provincial affairs and devolution. Out of the 10, half, which is 5, are led by women. So we have women issues represented with a ratio of 50-50. Women in parliament. The participation of women in parliament has evolved over many centuries. These leadership roles not only symbolize the commitment to gender equality, but also help to create a more inclusive political environment where women's perspectives and needs are prioritized. By having dedicated women in parliament, government can better address the unique challenges faced by women and promote policies that foster their empowerment across various sectors. As at February 2024, 28.9% of seats in parliament were held by women. The introduction of the Constitution in 2013 also provided a provision for quota representation of women. So besides those that are directly voted into parliament, you also have a quota reserved for women so that their voices can be heard in parliament. Minister of Women Affairs. The Zimbabwean government has established a robust policy framework promote gender equality and empower women. Zimbabwe has not only shown its political will to empower women, but has gone further to demonstrate its commitment by establishing a whole ministry for women affairs, community, small and medium enterprises development, dedicated to women empowerment. This ministry is headed by a lady minister, and it plays a pivotal role in formulating and implementing policies that support women's rights and development. This ministry also focuses on creating an enabling environment for women to participate fully in economic activities and leadership roles. As if this was not enough, the government has also established a Women's Empowerment Bank, which is also headed by a woman, meant to empower women economically and socially by providing access to affordable and innovative women-centered financial products and services. The context of mine action in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe acknowledges the gender and age-sensitive actions in the CM REAP Anger Action Plan 2025 to 29 and its sex-age disaggregated data reporting obligation. Gender-sensitive mine action will also contribute to the realization of Sustainable Development Goal number 5 on gender equality through mainstreaming gender in all operations and guaranteeing non-discriminatory opportunities. The legacy of landmines in Zimbabwe is profound, affecting rural communities, especially women and children, hindering economic development. Demining organizations have dedicated their resources to clearing these dangerous remnants of war. However, the success of these efforts goes beyond technical demining, as it encompasses community engagement and support, particularly concerning gender equality. In the Zimbabwean context, Geographic Information Systems, which is a tool for capturing, storing, analyzing, and displaying geographically referenced information to help users understand spatial relations and patterns, is a male-dominated field. However, Hello Trust and Apopo have made a positive move by recruiting 2 and 1 females, respectively. The role of women in mine action. Traditionally, mine action has been a male-dominated field, but the growing recognition of women contributions has prompted organizations to actively promote female in these sectors. The role of women in mine action is crucial and multifaceted, encompassing various aspects such as community engagement, technical expertise, as well as leadership. Here are some key points highlighting their contributions. Community engagement, awareness and education. Women often play a central role in educating their communities about landmines, unexploded ordinances. They also raise awareness of the dangers and promote safety practices. Women are also involved in advocacy, where women advocate for the needs of their communities and the communities that are affected by landmines, ensuring that their voices are heard in discussions on mine action policies. Technical roles. Demining operations. Women are increasingly involved in technical roles, including demining operations. Their participation enhances the effectiveness of these efforts as diverse teams often perform better. Training and capacity building. Women contribute to training programs, equipping others with the skills needed for mine detection as well as clearance. Moving on to leadership and decision-making, leadership positions. Women are taking on leadership roles in mine action programs, influencing policies and strategies at local, national, and international levels. Policy development. The involvement of women in decision-making processes helps ensure that gender perspectives are integrated into mine action policies. Psychosocial support services. Women often provide psychological support to victims of landmines and their families, thus helping them to cope with trauma and as well as to reintegrate them back into society. Women are also involved in research and data collection, where women contribute to data collection efforts, ensuring that gender-specific impacts of landmines are documented and addressed in mine action initiatives. A look at the Zimbabwe Mine Action Center. In Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Mine Action Center, which is the regulatory authority for all mine action activities, espouses gender, diversity, and inclusion strategies. ZIMAC is working towards increasing women's representation in this traditionally male-dominated aspect. Currently, the Zimbabwe Mine Action Center has got 16% of its staff as women. ZIMAC is also promoting gender employment, whereby 5 women are currently being employed within the Mine Action Center, with 2 in managerial positions as victims assistance officers. And as a result, ZIMAC has benefited immensely from online training that we receive from time to time from the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining. The next is Hello Trust, which is one of the operators conducting demining operations in Zimbabwe. Hello Trust has made significant strides in integrating women into its teams. Out of 346 employees, 98 are females, which is about 30%. It is interesting to note that 2 females are employed in the Information Management Department as Geographic Information Systems officers, and 1 as an information manager. This has brought a unique face in the field, which is masculine dominated. A much more detailed analysis of efforts that have been taken by Hello Trust to empower women through geographic information systems will be presented by Luan Jaupi later on. Mines Advisor Group. The Mines Advisor Group, one of the international operators also operating in Zimbabwe, is focused on women empowerment, emphasizing the importance of gender-sensitive approaches in their operations, with 44% of their staff being women. The Mines Advisor Group has also implemented programs aimed to increase women's participation in demining and community risk education. In field operations, the Mines Advisor Group has employed 19 deminers, 2 demining deputy team leaders, 2 drivers, 2 community assistance officers, 2 team leaders, and 1 field supervisors, as well as supporting staff comprising of 1 administrative graduate trainee and 1 senior finance coordinator, 1 human resources or SAFE coordinating, and as well as 1 logistics coordinator. And these records show the importance that we attach to women empowerment. The Norwegian People's Aid, another non-governmental organization conducting demining operations in Zimbabwe, the Norwegian People's Aid has taken a comprehensive approach to gender in mine action, with 40% of their employees being women. Their initiatives include training programs specifically designed for women, aiming to equip them with the necessary skills for demining and leadership. The Norwegian People's Aid commitment to gender equality is reflected in their policies, which advocate for women representation at all levels of their operations. 57 out of 142 are females. Of the above said figure, 3 ladies are in managerial positions, which is a milestone achievement in as far as gender and diversity in mine action is concerned. Apopo. Apopo also promoted gender equality within its workforce, with 30% of its staff being women. The organization actively recruits women and provides them with opportunities for career advancement, with some in managerial positions, 2 as supervisors, and 1 as a community liaison officer, and also 1 as a data collection officer. By fostering an inclusive workplace, Apopo not only embraces and enhances its operational capacity, but also sets an example for gender equality in broader humanitarian sector. Sadly, as all of you may be aware, Apopo is closing shop in Zimbabwe following the termination of donor funding from the United States. And it is now the duty of the Zimbabwe Mine Action Center as the regulatory body to find ways and means to ensure that there is no redundancy of the capacity that had been created. Having said that, I will go to the most interesting aspect. In conclusion, the government of Zimbabwe is committed to promoting women empowerment and facilitating their leadership roles in both the private and public sectors. Through comprehensive policies, training programs, and support for female entrepreneurship, the government aims to create an inclusive environment where women can thrive as leaders. Continued efforts to address cultural barriers and enhance collaboration among stakeholders will be crucial in achieving gender equality and empowering women to contribute fully to national development. Food for thought for national authorities could be the inclusion of policy with regards to registration of non-governmental organizations operating in your country. If the inclusion of women becomes one of the aspects that guide licensing for operators, I think we'll go a very long way to try and empower women and ensure that they're included in this effort. The efforts of Halo Trust, MAG, NPA, and Apopo in Zimbabwe highlight the critical role of women in mine action. By promoting gender equality and empowering women to take leadership roles, these organizations not only enhance their operational effectiveness, but also contribute to broader social change. As Zimbabwe continues to address the challenges posed by landmines, the involvement of women will be essential in building safer, more resilient communities. Empowering women in mine action is not just a moral imperative, but a strategic necessity that can lead to sustainable development and peace, as well as safer lands. I thank you.
Director, thank you for the comprehensive view from Zimbabwe. And I'm encouraged to see the commitment of the Zimbabwean government and Zimbabwe Mine Action Center to empowering women. So now I'm going to go through the Women in GIS for Demining initiative that we launched at Halo Trust in January 2024. Women empowerment is one of Halo's strategic objectives. Globally, 98% of our workforce come from conflict-impacted communities, and 30% are women. However, 40% of our data and GIS staff are women, and we are committed to see this number grow over 50%. So next year, if I'm presenting around the same topic, I want to say we have passed the 50% mark. In the context of the environment where we operate, women are underrepresented in the technology field, and more so in the geospatial discipline. This is due to many factors, such as societal barriers, but mainly it is due to lack of opportunities. Lack of opportunity for education and professional training. In January 2024, with support from Trimble Foundation, we launched the Women in GIS for Demining initiative that will contribute in the next generation of GIS leaders. And personally, this is one of the most exciting projects I've worked on in my professional career. So the initiative that is funded by Trimble Foundation is the form of a 3-year grant aiming to empower women from mine-impacted communities, build national capacity, and create efficient humanitarian landmine clearance operations using geospatial technologies. Over the period of 3 years, 11 women from conflict-impacted communities in 7 countries will be hired, trained, mentored to become GIS leaders. So there is a big difference from the normal hiring, where we go in a country, we advertise and we hire the most qualified candidate. In this case, we're looking for women that come from conflict-impacted communities. And in this case, we create additional expertise in country and not cause brain drain from the national institutions. So if Hello Trust shows up in Harare and steals the best GIS expert they have at the cadastre office, we cause a bit of a drama in the national institutions. So this grant focus in these countries: Ukraine, Yemen, Angola, Solomon Islands, Somalia, Sri Lanka, and Zimbabwe. And I'm now going to present 2 case studies of these women that have been empowered through GIS. Delight from Zimbabwe. She comes from the village of Natsiato in border with Mozambique. The village lands were contaminated by landmines that were laid during the 1970s. She grew up under the fear of landmines. The unknown dangers of landmines affected not only her schooling, but even her ability to have friends. Her best friend's father lost his leg after stepping on a landmine, and her parents were so anxious of the risk that landmines posed that they would not let her to play outside. Delight joined Hello in 2023 as a deminer, and she has cleared over 100 deadly landmines from the land of her community. In January 2024, as we launched the Women in GIS for Demining initiative, Delight was hired as a GIS specialist. For all the women we employ through this initiative, we develop a personalized, very personalized development plan that sees those women trained and mentored to become GIS specialists. Now, Delight supports the field mapping and data collection for over 200 field operational staff. She also supports information management and produces GIS mapping products for use in the field by the management and for reporting purposes. And here is an example of the maps Delight produces. What you'll see here in these maps is the very detailed maps that we are able to produce. Because with Trimble, we do not have only the Women in GIS for Demining initiative, but also it's a partnership where Trimble provides Hello Trust with high precision GPSs. As we speak, we have over 500 1 centimeter accuracy GPSs across all Hello globally, which means that we are able to map the detail that we couldn't map until now. Large-scale operations like Hello Trust, sourcing all this equipment is quite expensive. We're speaking a donation in the region of $3 million of equipment that enables us to map the detail. As you can see on the right side, so all these lanes that have been demined cannot be mapped with normal GPSs. The second case I'll bring is Elizaveta from eastern Ukraine. Elizaveta comes from the village of Oskel, just north of Kharkiv. And her village was under Russian occupation for 6 months. And she stayed in the village to look after her grandmother, who didn't want to abandon her home and her lands. Straight after 6 months, Elizaveta was desperate for a job, and she joined Hello Trust as a deminer in 2023. At the same time, she was studying meteorology in Kharkiv, but couldn't finish her studies yet because of the financial needs. She was hired as a GIS specialist in January 2024, has been trained and mentored, and supports field mapping and data collection. She runs the information management for the whole of the Kharkiv region and supports almost 300 operational staff. And again, these are the maps that she produces to support operational activities for Hello Trust in the eastern Ukraine. You'll see the level of detail that we are mapping. On the right side, you'll see the mapping not only of explosive ordnance, but also all the technology, detection technology and assets used to inform post-clearance and what was done to this land. And this is also where accuracy matters. As I said in the beginning of my presentation, 30% of Hello's global workforce are women. The information management and GIS staff make 40% of our workforce, but through GIS, that creates opportunities for women. In Zimbabwe, we've got 70% of our staff doing GIS. In Ukraine, 70%. In Somalia, 100%. In Yemen, 70%. And in Sri Lanka, 67%. In my 24 years of experience in the sector, I can confidently say that our women are better at doing GIS. Attention to detail is required, and they are just better. Sorry if this seems biased, but that's from my experience in the last 24 years. And now I'll pass the presentation to Noor. Noor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Luan. Actually, I cannot say more. When you said the women are better, I should be. And first of all, I'm really happy to see. When I try to count how many women are here, it looks like they are more than the men. But also we welcome the men because we also this initiative for the men to consider what we're trying to present here, for the men also to consider in the future. So in my presentation, I will add no more than Zimbabwe and Hello Trust, but I will focus more about our initiative of how we enable women to be skilled in the GIS. Before, I would like to speak about, and I think all of us agree, the migration problem it's geographical. We are looking for the location of confirmed or suspected hazardous area, which means we will need a system to help us in order to capture all the information. Once we were able to know where exactly the location of suspected hazardous or confirmed area, of course we will learn about the impact of the community. And in the same way, we will be able to determine if the infrastructure are impacted, are close to those suspected and confirmed hazardous area, and of course, the vegetation, which means we will be able to understand where the things are, similar to the examples that Luan mentioned, through two GIS experts coming from Zimbabwe and Ukraine, who they managed to capture the accuracy of the data using the GIS system. So that's also we try to work at the GICHD to make sure we transfer this knowledge and the information to know and understand where exactly things are in order to measure them, to shape them, and of course to determine how places are related, which means we will be able to understand the impact of each infrastructure, agriculture, in terms of the vegetarian, or the population are close by the confirmed and suspected hazardous area. And at the end, we will be able to prioritize, to plan, to monitor, and to help decision makers to make better decisions to which land need to be clear first. All what I said, it will require a system, and that system at the GICHD, and I'm sure most of you heard about it, we call it IMISMA core system, which is Information Management for Mine Action System. And during our observation, we currently support around 27 countries to implement the IMISMA core system worldwide. From the map you see here, this is most of the coverage we have. However, we still receive a lot of requests from affected communities to move from the old version, if you heard about the old version of IMISMA, to the new version of IMISMA core. This system, we have developed it in collaboration and partnership with Israel, which means we're providing this system free of charge to any national mine action program. Of course, when we have such a system, we will need people to use it in terms of how to develop, manage, prepare maps, which means we will have, of course, women participation. From our observation, we realize that women, they work on data collection, on hazardous mapping, on enhancing the accuracy, and also supporting safe land and risk education. The examples that has been provided by Zimbabwe and Hello Trust, it's quite key inputs, because it's not only they work with the National Mine Action Program, but also they work with an NGOs, despite if they were like international or national NGOs. So most of the challenge that we found that has been faced by the women, they have a very limited capacity, limited access to capacity, which means within this 27 country, we realize that for their job opportunity are limited. Usually they are facing difficulties to be hired as a female in a kind of a man domain community, and that's one of their challenges, and therefore they will not be able to improve their capacity, because from the beginning their job opportunities is less. And one of other challenges we realize, they have barriers to travel. We understand that countries have different cultural background, and some women, they may face a little bit challenges from cultural behavior to travel to another country to get those trainings, especially when it comes to trainings that they are outside of their country, or they have to go to travel to another province or to another city. So this is one of also the challenges that normally in most of the country we work with, they face this issue. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there is a little bit challenging in finding their career opportunities. And of course, the main point, some of those programs or country, they are lacking for gender inclusive policy. At the GICHD, what we try to do and what kind of action we adhere to adapt to those challenges, we started to provide a special training, such as TOT program on country level, which means in any country, we implement this system, the information management system, MSMACOR. We have advisor at the GICHD, and the advisor, he or she, will be responsible to train, to monitor, to support the GIS people, especially the women, to train them how to use the system or to help them how to build this information management system. And also, on top of that, whenever we deliver a global training or we deliver a regional workshop, we always sponsor and support women and cover their expenses to travel. However, the applicant number when it comes to the women are really few. And that's what we also monitor for any in-person attendees, in-person activity attendees. The figures or number are always less. Also, whenever we travel to the country to support them with MSMACOR, we always, when we meet with the directors, when we meet with the National Mine Action Program, we always encourage the recruitment. We always trying to promote for women in GIS. How we do also promote, not only by meeting with them, but also we have training material that we adapted to our trainings, our global trainings, to make sure we pass this message. And of course, we encourage mine action centers. And the last point I would like to emphasize here, because of those challenges, and not only of course for women, but mainly for women, we developed new methods of teaching. We call it e-learning, and this e-learning is like a self-learning base. And why we develop this training and how we make it accessible, as mentioned by the Zimbabwe director, many of our countries, we provide them those training online. Why? Because the demand, we found it so high, and also in terms of the cost efficiency, when people, they're traveling to attend global trainings, especially the women, the expenses of the travel are really high, and we are only targeting one person, while with self-learning, with e-learning, we manage to adapt to this issue by providing something free of charge that's available online all the time. So they can come and attend anytime to train themselves, to teach themselves how to do the mapping, how to do the GIS, and that's one of the reasons why we slowly starting to move from the in-person to the e-learning approach or to the self-learning approach. Also, in terms of time, whenever we deliver a training, of course, we need at least 1 week, which means day of the travel, 2 days for the travel, and 5 days for delivering the training, and that's time consumed, especially for the people who they are working in the field, who they are operators, to come and to travel, to arrange their visa, logistic, and it will consume a lot of time and effort. While with e-learning, this is the training platform where it's available for them to come and attend based on their availability and based on their hour working time. And it's more reach-wide because we can, with those e-learning approach, we manage to reach wider coverage, like between the Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Francophone region, the Eastern Europe, and so on. And of course, we realize that there is a variety of applicants, not only on women, but also disabilities. And the whole idea of e-learning, it came of course, from the pandemic issue that we faced 5 years ago. In a brief, trainings we provide for in-person for the system that I was talking earlier. One training, we call it MSMACOR, which is Mine Action Information Management Qualification at MSMACOR Administrator. And then there is around, currently there is 4 active e-learning platform. One of them, we call them Introduction to GIS for Mine Action, and also Introduction to ArcGIS Enterprise. Sorry, it's very technical terms. And Introduction to ArcGIS Survey 123, an Introduction to Web Maps and Dashboard. And currently, we are on the phase of developing another package for e-learning model for the end user, for those operators who they are doing survey in the field, and they also dealing with the data to combine them together in one educational platform. We are currently developing the end user development. And from our figures, just to give you a rough impact of attendees of female, when we are delivering any in-person training, you can see from the red color here, the women participation, how much is less than the man participation. While when we started the e-learning, we found the figures are increased rapidly, which means there is a huge interest from the women's side, but due to the barrier I was mentioning earlier and the challenges, they were not able to attend. And also we realize whenever we open any in-person training, there will be also an issue on country level to, let's say, to nominate who should attend to such as in a training. And unfortunately, always women that did not get the opportunity. And that's always the messages we get from the country level. And that's why we try to come up with some alternative solution to show that there is interest, there is needs, and we should be there at their country using a different way of learning and teaching. And here it is just kind of a rapid figures. You can see the difference number here. On my, let's say, on your right side or your left side, those are the figures for the in-person training and the number of attendees for women. While on your right side, I'm trying, on your right side, you can see that's for the self-learning, for the e-learning, the number and also the coverage of the women attendees for the e-learning, which means they have interest, they are already empowered, but unfortunately, they don't get their opportunities. And within that, I will end up and pass to you for call for action, Luan.
Thank you, Noor, for the presentation, but also for your hard work in developing these innovative approaches to develop accessible learning. So for the call for action, actually, I would ask the two panelists here to get their view on sort of what's their call for action and next steps. Director, what would you suggest as
Thank you very much. I think the first aspect has to do with the awareness campaigns. You would want to note that the reason why we are faced with this situation where we have very few women in GIS has to do sometimes with our cultural norms. It is therefore imperative that we conduct public awareness campaigns so as to change societal attitudes towards women in leadership, as well as to highlight the benefits of gender diversity in decision making. There is also need for collaboration with all stakeholders. The government has to collaborate with non-governmental organizations, the private sector players, international partners, to enhance the impact of women empowerment initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Noor, what would you add to that?
Honestly, I would, like the figures and the number that you both were presenting regarding the participation of women, it's considered quite kind of high. And our call for action would be, it's really need in the future, or at least to consider those trained, hired women by national and international NGO, those skilled women, where will be their future after the grant or their contract will be finished. So there should be some action also as a national mine action program from national authority to sustain those capacity, to have them on board within their program. Of course, there could be such as policy to apply to their strategy. An example mentioned earlier by the director, one of the policy for registration or accreditation on NGO level, that they should hire a female woman, but also on the national mine action level is to consider bring back all those trained, skilled women to their mine action program to sustain them within their country. So that's also, it's kind of a win-win activity between both actors. It's not only from the NGO, international, national NGO side, but also it should also consider from the national mine action side to keep those skilled, trained women, females within their domain. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. And from my end, I would add that more funding support is required to expand this initiative and create opportunities for an inclusive sector and more efficient field operations. The involvement of the private sector is critical, and especially the technology companies. At Taylor Trust, we have been working with quite a few technology companies from Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Trimble for technology partnerships. However, getting funding to hire, mentor, and train those women coming from impacted communities is more challenging. So my call would be more funding support. And now I would open the floor for questions from the audience. No questions? Okay, well, the panel, oh, sorry, I missed.
Okay, good morning. Maybe I just came in a bit late, but I just wanted to know whether for one to be recruited on e-learning, do you need, what qualifications, minimum qualifications are needed for one to be enrolled on e-learning for women in GIS?
Thank you so much for your question. Regarding the e-learning, you don't need to be qualified because the way that we design the e-learning self-model is to start from scratch. We start from primary level to the, let's say, Mediterranean level, to mid-level, and then to advanced. So you don't need to be qualified because the e-learning modality, it's been designed for a non-GIS person to learn from scratch how to be an information management in the GIS. And that's not only the e-learning model that we currently carry, but we also have a strategic plan to develop more and more with these coming years. But of course, you need to start from the model one, and steps by step, you end up till you be a professional with the GIS.
Yes, please.
Hello, I just wondered if we could hear a bit more about initiatives or efforts to retain women. So we've heard some good insights about the importance of awareness raising, awareness raising of the opportunities to bring them in to the sector, and then how the training works. But once women are in these positions, what measures and efforts are taken to retain them, and balance with some of the challenges that they might experience to be able to stay and develop their career on an ongoing basis once they've started.
Director, would you answer part of this question, or do you want me to? Okay, so yes, the retention of the workforce is a challenge in general, not only for these initiatives. In the case of the Hello Trust, our partnership with Trimble Foundation is for 3 years, from January 2024 to December 2026. It's these 3 years that provide employment, meaningful employment, career development for their future career. And I can tell you in the developing countries, GIS is a niche profession to have. So but of course, we want to make sure that we retain this capacity. And 98% of our workforce comes from the conflict-impacted communities. And as long as we have a project in those countries, those skills will be retained. Because starting from scratch is not going to be any cheaper. And the need for GIS technology is only going to grow. I decided not to mention anything about the artificial intelligence because I believe the human intelligence beats everything. But yes, we will do the best we can to retain. But retention, I believe it's a challenge on everything.
Yeah. I also wanted to add on the aspects that you have brought about. It's easier to retain the skills that would have been attained if one is still being employed by the operator. Like in this case, Hello Trust, MAG, Apopo, Norwegian People's Aid. As long as those that have been empowered are still working for those organizations, retention is much easier. But it becomes a bit more complicated when one of the operators has to close shop. Like in the case of Apopo that I earlier on indicated. I think with that kind of a scenario, it calls for need for national authorities to have mechanisms in place that would enhance that the capacity that had already been gained, it does not become redundant. But sometimes it goes beyond just the national capacity. There's also need to ensure that your national laws also have a provision for retention of capacity that has been gained, because you would agree with me, if that capacity were to be lost, to try and start all over again, it becomes most costly in terms of financial cost, in terms of time and so forth. So I think those are the aspects that we have to ponder about as national authorities. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if no more questions, I would like to conclude here by making a call. So let's make the Women in GIS for Safer Lands a sector-wide initiative where we create opportunities by hiring, training, mentoring women from impacted communities. And I would like to thank the panelists for joining me in this side event, and I would like to thank you for attending this morning, early morning. Thank you.